You're listening to Popcorn and Politics. What's the real deal? Hosted by Audrey Bell Kearney and Derek J. Wilson. Asking the hard-hitting questions you want answers to. From political leaders and political hopefuls from around the world.
I thought we're coming. I'm a little rusty today. Hey, y'all. Hey there.
Hey.
Welcome to another episode of Popcorn and Politics. I'm your host, Audrey Bell Kearney, along with my co-host, Derek J. Wilson. We're happy you are here today. Beautiful Sunday here in Georgia. I don't know where you are in the world, but it is lovely here.
Yes, it is. I was out doing some walking this morning, so it was a lovely weekend. I mean, I actually did some walking yesterday too. Yesterday evening, the family and I walked around some neighborhoods. So it's been a good weekend. It was hot yesterday. I think it got up to 80 degrees yesterday.
It was like 83, I think. When I went out yesterday, my husband and I was gone all day, like from like 8:30 in the morning to like 5:30. But it was like about 83 degrees, so it was gorgeous. And then this morning I got up and went outside and literally got grounded. So I took my shoes off and I stood on the ground to get grounded. So I could come and give you guys a great show today and be full of energy. So to get my energy from the earth. Okay, I sound crazy, right? But that's what
Yeah,
people do.
I didn't know where you was going with that. I was gonna let you make it. I was like, okay, she feeling spiritual today. She gonna start talking about her crystals in a minute.
No, I'm not. Even though I wear mine, I was at an event on Friday, and the guy said, "Is that citrine?" I said, "Yeah, that's citrine." He said, "Did you charge it?" "Yeah, that's I charge it all the time." "Did it work?" "I said, "I think so." So yeah, so I wear my crystals, baby. So listen, got a great show, but before we get on with our great show, what's going on in the world of politics as we know it?
Well, we are in the state of Georgia, and so one of the most important things we need to put out there is the voter registration deadline for the Georgia 2022 primary is Monday. If you have not registered to vote for this primary and you are of the age of 18 and up, please register by Monday. Uh, of course, the races in this race includes the U.S. Senate, the governor race. We have tons of local races. We have school board races, state reps, Congress. So this is a major. I mean, it's a midterm election, so it's a major year, and one of our candidates will be on today shortly, and pretty sure he'll stress how important this year is. And so, if you have not registered to vote, you have until tomorrow to do so. So please register to vote.
Quick
Uh,
question for you. For those who have registered and they want to vote by ballot, can they vote by ballot on the if they don't have a ballot? And I think about what make me think about that is my uncle. He's a senior, has not received the ballot in the mail. He is registered to vote, but there is not a ballot that came in the mail.
did he fill out a application?
I
You
don't
have to
know.
request it.
I
Yeah,
have to
they
check with
not.
him on that.
They're no longer doing well. That was a one-time thing anyway. That they did that in 2020. But here in the state of Georgia, you have to request a mail-in ballot
Okay,
in
so I
order
had to double check with him on
to
that
do that.
one. And so
Right.
for all of you who have seniors in your lives who may be looking for the ballot to automatically come in the mail, that is not the case. So you have to request that information. So make sure that you have help them get that request in ahead of time so that the ballot will get back to you in time to vote. So I just thought about that as we were talking.
Yes, and then also make sure when you get the actual ballot, uh, make sure you send it off in time. So it has to be received, not postmarked. It has to be received by 7 p.m. Uh, May 24th, election day. So if it's received at 7:01, it could possibly not be counted. So you want to make sure that it's received by the time that the polls are closed. Uh, so uh, that's really it. Well, you got then other news in Georgia. You got Margie Taylor Greene. She's the nutball up there in North Georgia. That's that's running for reelection. got a lot of challenges going against her. I'm gonna put on a record. I hope she does not win. But she's dealing with that. She's also I guess getting interviewed or hearing regarding the January 6th insurrection and her involvement. And so, I'm looking forward to her not winning and to her facing some form of consequences for her involvement in the January 6th insurrection. Um, and then that's really the only news that worth talking about. I just brought her up because since you always talking about HW, I figured let me talk about another lunatic. Uh, so
So there, so excuse me, y'all. Excuse me. So, so listen. Every time I'm looking at political news, Herschel Walker is always doing something, and to me, it's funny. So I'm always like, oh my god, he did something else, and they're like, why we always gotta talk about him because he always does something. But that being said, she's just as nutty. So, so they asked her, did you say what you said about Nancy Pelosi? She was like, no. She straight out said no, and and they was like, yeah, but you did say that. She's like, well, what I said was, she's nuts. Let's go ahead with this show because
yeah,
we can talk about them crazy people. And it's so weird because I talk to people from both parties, and as a matter of fact, I had a conversation with someone from the other party this past week, and and I talked to them because at the end of the day, we're human, all human, and we have our differences, but we do have some similarities. And it's so refreshing to talk to somebody from the other party who has some sense. They just have their views about things. And believe it or not, Derek, one of the things that they have really strong views about is privacy. Because I mentioned that whole privacy to this person and he agreed. And I'm like, wow, they have really strong opinions about privacy. And when they think that there's going to be free healthcare and free whatever, they feel like that's going to take their privacy away. And in my mind, I'm thinking we don't have any privacy. In my mind, we have no privacy. And let me tell y'all something just real quick. So I'm working on a campaign for somebody, and I was talking to some colleagues, and they was like, yeah, Audrey, if you walk out your house, if you look at something on your television and you go across town and on your phone is gonna ping from the tower where your TV, and you can it was freaky. So we don't have any privacy. I said all that to say, in my opinion, we don't have any privacy, but listen.
I mean, well, we all know there's no any privacy. I mean, we could be sitting here talking, and all of a sudden your phone gonna say, "What was that?"
Right,
Because usually you're supposed to say, "Hey Siri" or "Hey Google," but now it's just the point that you just see. Perfect example. I just said it, and now it's talking to me.
right.
Uh, but yeah. I mean, that's no privacy.
There's no privacy.
Alexa has solved several crimes just by hearing what transpired. That's why we don't have I'm not a criminal, but that's why we don't have Alexa in my house. I feel like that's too much iRobot. If anybody old enough to remember iRobot, know that at some point the robots turned against you. I will be one of those houses that don't have a robot.
You're gonna have a robot, Derek. They're gonna make you have a robot. So you can fight Alexa right now, but you're gonna have a robot. Watch and see. What mark my
Yeah.
word. Listen, let's stop talking. We gotta guess. So I guess today he's young, he's vibrant, he's progressive, he's ready to get some, I want to say some other stuff. He want to get some stuff done here. But this is a family show. So I'm gonna say
Get some
stuff.
ish. You can say
He's
ish.
gonna get some stuff done. So without further ado, we would like to welcome JT Wu to our show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Woo,
Hey guys, how
buddy.
are y'all? Can
Oh,
you hear me?
Good in yourself.
Let's go.
what's
Hey
going
guys,
on?
thanks so much for having me.
Hey,
Good afternoon, I guess now.
Good afternoon. Good
yes,
afternoon.
it's
Thank you
morning
for being
somewhere.
here.
No, we
Huh?
just we just got out of, you know how it is. Church can run long sometimes, and so church ran a little bit long. They were doing a little youth fundraiser afterwards, but we're happy to be here. Really excited to get to talk to y'all this morning.
Hey, you must be one of those Southern Baptist churches.
Maybe just a little bit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Let me
know,
tell y'all something. Don't talk about the Southern Baptist Church. You got to get the whole word, the entire word for the year on Sunday. One Sunday, you get the word. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding,
yeah,
y'all.
they preach from Genesis and Revelation every Sunday.
Listen
All
here,
good things. All good
we're gonna
All
get
things.
some
good things.
backlash for that there. We talking about the church. Don't be talking about the church. We're gonna get some
We're
backlash.
not, we love our church. We love it so much that we sit there for 3 hours. So anyway, going JT Wu, that he's a candidate that's running for, help me out.
Yep, I'm running for the Georgia State House, so it's in the newly drawn District 97. So as I know you and your viewers are
Yeah.
probably well aware of, they have redrawn the maps this cycle and renumbered all the districts. So
Yeah.
friendly plug to make sure you're going to the register to vote page on the Secretary of State's website, just to make sure that you know what your latest precincts and ballots are and district numbers are. But this is a district that includes Berkeley Lake, Peachtree Corners, Duluth, and Norcross. And so selfishly, it's a little bit fun too, because I grew up in Duluth. I now live in Norcross, so it's kind of fun to be running for the hometown district, as it were. But it's a vibrant district, some lovely cities, incredibly diverse, and really just, we're excited to be on the front lines, running as the next generation candidate here to continue to make sure that we keep making positive change in Gwinnett.
Berkeley Lake is always so quiet. Like, you never hear anything about Berkeley Lakes. Like, you almost forget that they're there because it's so quiet.
And there, it's a lovely community. That lake is something else. It is gorgeous. But yeah, I mean, it's, I think for all of our cities, there's just so much diversity, and there's so much that is different about each of them. But, they're coming together to make one big, really lovely quilt, I think, here in Gwinnett. And that's what we're excited about.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So how many new districts were there drawn? Because I think we interviewed Ryan Cox, who is running in 111.
That's right.
No, 110 is new.
Mm-hmm. So there were a couple of districts that were, drawn to be more open seats. So this one is an open seat. The incumbent is actually running for the state Senate now. So, once again, back in the people's hands, so to speak. But I think there were also a couple of districts, unfortunately, thanks to some, we'll call it gerrymandering nonsense, where, incumbents were pitted against each other. And that's never a fun thing to see. And that certainly happened up here in Gwinnett. And so, we have our share of difficulties for that too. But from our perspective, we're just excited about seeing, what this next General Assembly is going to look like, and ensuring that it continues to represent the diversity and really the values of those things that we all share in common up here in Gwinnett County.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I was looking at your website. I know you have some strong platforms that you're running on, but one that's really caught my attention, which always does, is growing our economy. So let's talk about that for a minute, because you said, I want to design an urban-rural partnership to support Georgia businesses and create new jobs. What is an urban-rural partnership? What does that look like?
I love it. I love this question. I hardly ever get to talk about this. Yeah. So, from our perspective, right, I think Gwinnett is such a vibrant and a diverse place because it represents so many folks from so many walks of life, different industries, right, different backgrounds. And I think as, the Metro Atlanta area continues to grow and continues to urbanize, we want to make sure, especially in the General Assembly, I think that the rest of our state continues to feel some of those economic benefits too. I think we see it often here, where it feels like, there's one big industry or something that's really powering a town, particularly in our more rural communities. And as soon as that goes away, or maybe if those folks move or those jobs go to another part of the state, that can have really devastating impacts and consequences for those areas. And so from my perspective, what we would love to be kind of designing and spearheading are partnerships that actually tap into the strengths of rural areas where maybe these industries had once upon a time left, but there's a lot of opportunity now for new industries to come in, or new factories or new manufacturing opportunities. And boy, wouldn't it be great as a state if we could design programs that would deliberately direct some of those industries here within the state of Georgia to making sure that they are incentivized to go and into our more rural areas of the state and help continue the economic revitalization and development that those places desperately need. And so from our perspective, it's just making sure that we have that economic development framework in mind at all times, and saying, working with our partners, not just on the ground, but in the business community, to say, what are the kinds of things that you would want to see? Like, what would make these things more attractive? And then doing that in a way that, really make sure that we're lifting all boats, right? We don't want to be picking winners and losers here, but we want to be making sure that high quality and future-oriented jobs are available, not just folks here in Metro Atlanta, in Gwinnett County, where I'm representing, but all across the Peach State.
I would love to see, Derek and I were in a meeting in Newton County a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that was pretty cool about where they were is that they had Meta, who already has a campus in Newton County, but they're building a second campus. And so we have a tech community here in Gwinnett County, in your area, in Peachtree Corners. Curiosity Lab over there in Atlanta Tech Village, what is that, North or whatever. So we have that. But on the east side, there is no tech. And so we want to see more of a tech hub out here on our side. Now I know that's not what you cover, but that's something we would love to see. So
No, and I think I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I just think that would be a great, advance to Gwinnett altogether. So.
Amen. I think you're probably preaching to the choir here. You probably guessed that already. But from my perspective, right, especially when it comes to tech and high tech jobs, things that can be done remotely, right? I think, of course, we want to make sure that all areas of the state, and this is still something that we need to continue to develop, are equipped for high speed internet access and for Wi-Fi, right? I mean, there are still pockets of where there are lacks of connectivity here in Georgia, and it's the year of our Lord 2022, and I think that we the people who live in our state deserve better. So making sure that one, we're fixing those issues, but two, given the kind of prevalence I think of remote work that is rising, especially because of the pandemic and in the tech space, gosh, it would make a tremendous amount of sense to continue to spread those opportunities out across our county and make sure that, to your point, we have pockets of tech longevity all across our state and our county.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see one of your platforms is regarding education. So for those of you who are not aware, explain to them your connection to education and why, based on that connection, why do you feel that your experience, when it comes down to talking about education and funding education, is why your experience is needed on that level, state level.
Absolutely. All right. So cut me off if y'all get bored. But, for me, I'm a child of immigrants, right? So mom and dad, my dad's Malaysian Chinese, my mom's Filipino Chinese. They actually came to this country in the 1980s for a better education in pursuit of a better life. I think like so many immigrant families to the United States did. They actually met at Ole Miss. So they actually have a very great affinity for the South. They've been here for quite some time. But they chose to put down roots in Gwinnett in large part because, this is the place where they felt welcomed and they felt like they could raise a family, but also, the strength of our schools. And so starting out in Gwinnett County Public Schools as a kindergartner, I had a tremendous amount of support from not just my parents, but from our community. It wasn't easy, but folks sacrificed to help make sure that, I understand what was going on in school, that I had opportunities to ask questions and make sure I felt supported. And because of that, I was able to graduate on scholarship from Princeton in 2016 and then come on back home where I quickly realized, as I think many of us on this call might be familiar with, that not all of the kids that are in Gwinnett County now necessarily have those same sorts of educational supports, particularly as we have become a much more diverse county, a county where English might not always be spoken in the home in many households. And so, you put yourself in the mindset of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, they're going to kindergarten for the first time. Their parents don't speak any English in the home or maybe speak limited English. Mom and dad are working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. And then this kiddo is having to learn a second language and also their curriculum at the same time from a teacher who might not necessarily speak whatever language they speak in the home, right? And it's not just Spanish or Korean or Vietnamese. It's in some of our high schools, we have 80 countries represented in those student bodies alone. And so, wow. it's we can't ask our teachers to learn all 80 different languages, right? So I think for us, we really saw a huge need. Over half of our kids in Gwinnett County today are still struggling to read English proficiently by the 3rd grade. And nationally, that's even more of a trend. It's over 65% of our kids nationally. And keep in mind that some of these survey statistics were actually taken before COVID. And so you got to think that digital learning and kind of the massive disruption hasn't really helped those numbers. And so what we did was, talked around to folks. I serve on the library board as well, the first Asian American to be appointed to the Gwinnett Library Board, which just as an aside is kind of fun having grown up going to the Gwinnett libraries, going around that Duluth branch to see what they've become today is just remarkable. But we talked to teachers and said, we want to help, as community members, as business leaders, what can we do to come alongside y'all? And they basically said, we need more resources and we just need more multilingual assistance to meet our kids in smaller group settings where they are. And so we said, okay, let's get to work. And so what my team and I did, we founded a nonprofit organization called Preface, Preface. And what that organization does is at no cost to schools, no cost to parents, and in partnership with school districts like the Gwinnett County Public School System, in partnership with the Georgia Department of Education, we created essentially high-impact tutoring models that train and recruit local high school students from within communities, many of whom speak these languages that these kiddos might speak in the home, to then read to them during the school day, to act as supplements and as complements to our hardworking teachers already, and to help get them that additional leg up that they need to go from, as we've seen, functionally illiterate to reading at or above grade level in as little as 10 weeks. And so for us to be able to design that kind of an innovative program together with our teachers, together with our parents, and at no additional cost to our schools was a huge blessing. And so for me, people always sometimes say,
oh man.
Come back, come back.
It was getting good.
It was, and my mind was over here rolling because I got like a million questions about just being a nonprofit. Because we talked to a lot of, we talked. I talked. I don't know about you, Derek, but I talked to a lot of nonprofits, and a lot of the times, one of the questions is, how do we get this funding? So apparently, he's gotten that funding to be able to offer such a great program, and I want to talk to him about that part, and how can he help support other nonprofits who have programs that cater to children, and I know quite a few actually. So hopefully he'll sign out and come. JT, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. So if you can sign out and come back in, we'll be right here waiting on you because I love what you were talking about. And I think it was you, Derek, that told me, because I didn't know this stat about the 3-year-old. If they have not did something by 3, what was that you said before?
Yeah, so I've been running and shouting this out like I can't think of her name right now, but anyway, for years, when I ran for county commissioner, that was one of my platforms issues about the early childhood education here in the county. Statistics shows that if a third grader is not reading on grade level, um, that introduces the school to prison pipeline. So it's third grade. If they're not by grade level, they'll have a challenging education career moving forward.
Yeah,
And so and we all know, they use statistics from third grade to determine how many beds are needed in prisons. If they need to build more prisons, fund more prisons. uh, I think I heard a state representative say that the state of Georgia budget fund increases for prisons while they're continuing to decrease in education. So
that's terrible.
uh, and on JT Wu's webpage, one of his things regarding education, he says restoring the $600 million cut from the they cut $600 million from the public school system.
That
The
is
state of Georgia.
unbelievable. You know what's crazy, Derek, is that I don't think people understand that. And well, maybe here's the problem. They do understand, but the people that make these cuts, their kids don't have to worry about education because they have a private education. So
Right.
their children are not worried about
Hey
education because
guys,
their education is private. Okay, thank you so much for coming back. I was just
I
trying to
am
make a
so
point.
sorry. We were yeah, we had some technical difficulties there, but
That's
please
okay. We
no
have it all
reflection
the
on what
time.
we. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But hey, good to be back. And sorry, I
Well,
don't
that
know if
can go into. I know we were talking about education, but at first
yeah,
we was talking about tech. We do need some state and some federal funding in Gwinnett County because
absolutely.
we got too many dead spots when it come down to cell phone coverage
What?
and all this and that.
Exactly.
you know,
Absolutely.
Exactly.
you just proved it.
Exactly. You going somewhere, and yeah, absolutely. And sorry, just to really finish that thought again,
Yeah.
just for folks, sometimes they say, JT, you talk about education so much, right? Like we get it. You love education and you love reading and you think it's important. And they're like, why? There's so many other things that we can be talking about too. And I agree, from healthcare to voting rights. But to me, it's all about fundamentally, what are we leaving behind for our next generation, right? And what kind of an American dream are we allowing them to experience and to have as they're growing up? And so for me, it's everything that we do from every policy standpoint goes back to how are we treating our kids and what are we setting them up for and what kind of life are we setting them up for to have in the future. And that's why I think things like reading and things like having baseline opportunities to achieve their own American dreams and to be successful are so fundamentally important. So that's all I got to say there, but we can definitely talk about tech too.
No,
Oh yeah.
thank you
No,
so
no,
much
no.
for sharing that. One of the things when you were off camera, Derek and I was talking, we talked to a lot of people in politics, community leaders, nonprofit leaders, and one of the things that I have recently in the last week, I've talked to two nonprofits that focus on children, and the question is always the same: how do we fund these programs? Because what people don't understand is, I think a lot of people don't understand is, if we're not taking care of the kids right now, who's going to take care of us? Like, we won't be young and
Yeah,
spry, and I'm talking about y'all because I'm not even young and spry no more. We won't be young and spry forever, and so we have to prepare our kids. And so, if we have leaders who want to help these kids prepare for the future, how can they get this funding that's always seemed to be out there, but you can't find it? So I know that your organization has been fortunate enough to be able to partner with the Board of Ed and the Georgia State Board of Education. Where's the money? How can they get it? Because there are a lot of you out there.
absolutely. And I think you hit on a great point, right? Like it should not just be about, hey, who do you happen to know, right, on this particular point? And again, that's always great, but there are so many organizations out there that are doing such great work. And so for us, we didn't invent mentorship, right? Like we didn't invent some of these strategies like high impact tutoring and multilingual assistance. Like this is all stuff that we gleaned and we did the research. Obviously, we did the white papers, but this kind of stuff has been in circulation, and organizations have been doing these things separately for years. And so what we just wanted to do was bring this stuff together, put it under one roof, and then not claim these best practices as our own, but actually help disseminate them and get them out into the communities, into the different states. We're in 11 states now that we operate in, and to try to do that at low cost as possible. But definitely for me, when I put the nonprofit hat on and we're talking to organizations, it's all about, hey, how can we create more transparent processes so that, these funds aren't being decided by, a group of folks that maybe are sitting in a back room somewhere, but there are, open, very, very easy to track, and very objective kind of scorecards, basically, that tell you how these funds are getting awarded. And I think that really does start with having folks in the room who are designing these policies, who are designing these mechanisms, who have been there, right? Who get how hard it can be sometimes to apply for grant funding and have everything just be thrown into an opaque box, and not really knowing what happens until 6 months after when you get an email, right? I think it requires there to be a bit of a sea change in the folks who are designing these mechanisms and these regulations. And I think that starts, again, with folks like us, folks who are involved in the community and who are in these calls on a daily or on a weekly basis, who see opportunities for improvement firsthand.
What's your thoughts on charter schools?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I got to say, I've had the benefit of being in a public and a private school, right? I've had both public and private education. And my parents, invested and they made the best decisions for what they thought, would help their kids. What I will say is I don't want any parent to also have to make that choice, right? Where it comes down to, where do I want to send my kid? Do I want to, go into debt necessary, perhaps, and send my kid into an educational environment where they think that they're going to get a better education? Or do I want to, stay in the public school that is available to me? For me, I think it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, right? We should be able to invest more in our public education systems and hold schools, like charter schools, like magnet schools, who I think can do a lot of great things when they're focused on their subspecialties, when they're focused on the areas of need, and the core values and missions that they were established to do. As long as we can make sure that we're holding them accountable and they're doing the right things for our students, then great. But I don't want this to be a conversation where it's like you either like public schools or you like private schools, and you have to choose between the two of them. Because I think, to me, we need to have a genuine conversation to make sure that our public schools are fully funded. I mean, zero stop, right? For me, it's QBE, we have been underfunding our public school systems for 17 out of the last 20 years. And having 1 year where we do fully fund it doesn't make up for the other 17 years where that wasn't the case. But if we really want to have things be apples to apples, then let's fully fund our public schools. And then let's have a conversation on, hey, do we still need alternative educational options or not? But right now, I think it's a little bit of a disingenuous game for folks to say, oh, well, public schools are underperforming, so therefore we should eliminate them entirely, when, you've been cutting their funding again for over a decade and a half.
Wow,
Right.
That's a long time.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, and again, this is by the government's own formula, right? This is the formula that they created, that lawmakers signed into law, and have just, again, to this point, just chosen to not respect.
And that's the QBE.
The Quality Basic Education formula. That's
Yeah.
right. And I don't want to bore your listeners too much. I think there are a lot of opportunities for additional improvements to that formula. But again, eyes wide open, given the current state of the General Assembly, given the current things that sometimes folks want to focus on, I think it's going to be challenging to amend that formula in a way that maybe all of us can get behind in the immediate future. But in the medium to long term, that's something that we need to be fighting for, and that's something that we need to continue to put into the conversation, because our children deserve better.
Yes.
I want to shift a little bit. It's still in education, but I read an article and I talked about this. I think it was on Monday.
Sure.
It might have been last week, but there was a student at one of the high schools here in Gwinnett County, and he said that he feel like they should have a seat at the table when it comes to their education, because the stuff that they're teaching, they could care less about. And that was from him and his fellow students. And so
Sure.
What's your thoughts on that? Because when you think about the Civil War, what good does it really do? And that's my opinion. I'm with the kids on that. Like,
Sure.
I have yet to do anything with the Civil War in my whole life, and I've been here on the earth a little bit now. So I haven't done anything with that. I get why history is important.
Let
Go
me jump
ahead.
into that. As a political science a person,
Jump.
and that loves history. I mean, history is history. I mean, it should be taught. And so I would, as a student, I mean, we all felt like things was being taught that we didn't need or was useless. For the longest, I never could understand why algebra was required, why we need to take algebra. But then as I got older, and I'm noticing as I'm trying to calculate different things, I own the janitorial company. Well, when I'm trying to do the formula to figure out how much to charge you based on square foot, that's an X and a Y. That's algebra, So I say that to say that we as kids may not know exactly uh, what's best for us at that time. Because again, I thought algebra was stupid and unneeded, but we all use algebra on a daily basis. RJ, you sitting up there thinking whenever you're trying to calculate how much to charge someone for some services, that's algebra. So as
But see,
far as
Jack,
history,
I don't disagree with you when it comes to math and science. I do not. I'll
I mean,
disagree.
history is
I want to
required
know what.
because if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it.
Yeah, happy to. And if I let me jump in, I think
Yeah, go
both
ahead.
of y'all are. I think both of y'all are very much making valid points, right? I mean, I think so. Let's talk about the history thing first, and I will just say I think it is still important to make sure that we're teaching American history, but a true and an accurate reading of American history, right? I mean, I think it's a little bit concerning to see attempts to kind of sweep some of our past under the rug and things, especially in a state like Georgia, where look, we were the state where the cornerstone speech was delivered, right? I mean, at the core that the inequality between races was the cornerstone of the fight for what caused the Civil War, right? I mean, that is an inarguable historic fact. And so I do think that it's important that we make sure that, especially when we teach our state's history, we recognize the things that were not great about it in the past, but that we also inspire our next generation to learn from those mistakes and to continue moving forward together to forge that more perfect union that we all know and believe in, I think, as Georgians and Americans. So I will say that I do think it's important, if only for that reason, to make sure that we continue to defend free and an open discussion of our history in our schools. But to the students' point, I absolutely understand where they can be coming from too, because I think in our education system these days, so often, whether that's students or maybe even some teachers or professionals in the classroom, I think they feel like maybe sometimes they don't have as much of a voice in the way that things are run or in the way that curricula are maybe being designed as they would like. And I think that ultimately comes down to kind of, we need to respect our teachers as professionals, obviously, and we need to let them do the teaching job that they signed up to do. They are not doing this for any other reason, I would likely think, other than they have a real passion for education. That's why they got into it in the first place, right? They want to help kids. They want kids to be able to learn. And I don't think we should be tying their hands behind their back and saying, yeah, but you have to do this, but only on a Tuesday, on the second day of every month or whatever. And so I do think it's a little bit of a back and forth. And so if what people are saying is we want more of a seat at the table, I think that could be actually a pretty positive thing for our educational system all around, in that, the more that we're all built into this process of which, at its core, I think our educational system should be designed to educate the next generation of leaders and to make them critical thinkers, right? And to make them able to then go into their next stages of life and be able to achieve and dream and do what they want to do. I don't think that we're going to get those results by necessarily, dictating a one-size-fits-all method from the top, right? And I think that the more voices and the more perspectives that we have involved in those conversations respectfully, I think it's going to be better for our students and for our society at the end of the day.
Yeah. And this wasn't supposed to be a show about education, but this is like a hot topic because I think a lot is coming up. And I'm still here, y'all. I'm sorry, but I gotta talk about this real quick. So,
of course,
let's talk about daycare for a second. And livable wages and education when it comes to daycare. There are a lot of daycare workers out there, and we need them because parents have to go to work. One of the issues that I found, because I have a granddaughter in daycare, is that a lot of times the daycare workers, just like the teachers, are just overworked and underpaid. And when I say underpaid, I mean totally underpaid, because they are dealing with smaller children. Most time babies up to 3 years old. So they're really struggling trying to make ends meet, put up with somebody else's kids for hours and hours and hours every day, and they're just underpaid. What's your plan for bringing livable wages up in your area? Because I know just recently the county said, you know what, we're going to increase it 8 to 10%. So if you're a county worker, you can get an increase. But what about those who are not county workers, to at least get to $15 an hour? Because most of them don't make that.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, Audrey. So I serve on the Gwinnett Library Board as well. And so we actually, a couple of months ago, voted entire system-wide to raise our minimum wage for all of our employees to $15 an hour, actually before the county did it, because we saw this coming. I mean, I'm sure it was similar discussions at the county, but in Gwinnett, even I think $15 an hour is kind of the bare minimum, right? That sometimes folks might need to be making in order to, continue to raise their family and to thrive here in Gwinnett. And we can't just sit around waiting for the market to make that correction on our own to a large extent, especially when it comes to these, larger, maybe slower moving institutions. And so that was something that was a vote that I took unanimously with my colleagues, alongside after extensive deliberation with our executive team, because not only do we feel like it was the right thing to do, but from an economic perspective, if we're truly about investing in our employees and retaining good talent here in Gwinnett, there is an economic cost to losing workers and then having to rehire and retrain people, right? And so from our perspective, it really made sense. It was the right thing to do at the right time, and we checked all the boxes on that one. As far as it goes to daycare costs and the rising costs of childcare, I mean, shoot, you mentioned it yourself. Childcare can cost more than a 4-year college for in-state tuition here for babies, babies up to 3 years old, right? I mean, these are the things that we see in the nonprofit world, especially every single day. And so I definitely think that it's something that we need to be investing in more, right? As not only a county and as a state, but increasing these accesses to opportunities for early childcare providers, making sure that, to your point, we're paying them as professionals, we're respecting the amazing work that they do for our families and for our communities and for our children every single day, and giving them that pathway to, being able to not have to have 4 other jobs in addition to doing childcare stuff. So that our economy can continue to thrive. And so I think, again, that just requires people who have been familiar with these situations, who understand these incredible hardships that folks are going through right now, to be in these positions and to be in the room when we're talking about these policies and about, hey, okay, we want to expand, childcare access. Well, what are the ways that we can do that? How can we surgically tailor those levers to make sure that not only are we expanding supply in the market for these providers, but that they're getting paid what they need to be paid along the way?
Man, I think if you do that, you're going to change the lives of so many childcare workers around the world, because
absolutely,
I couldn't. That's a job that I couldn't do. Woo, that's why I had one child. Go ahead, Derek. I know you want to say something. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Your microphone's not on. Some kind of way you done cut yourself off. Are you unplugged?
Oh, oops. Oops. So I forgot. Okay. I mean, so you're running for, state rep, which deals with, the state as a whole. I don't know if people is aware of this, but the state of Georgia minimum wage is $5.15 an hour. The state of Georgia's minimum wage is $5.15 an hour. And, for those of people who want to say, well, that's not true, all you got to do is go to the Department of Labor. Georgia is dol.georgia.gov/minimum-wage. And it will tell you that the federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. But the state of Georgia's minimum wage is $5.15 an hour. That's ridiculous. $7.25 is ridiculous, but the $5.15 is even worse. My question is, as a state rep, will you be one of the ones pushing to get the state minimum wage risen to at least at least $7.25, but at least $5,
Yes,
at least $15 an hour.
Yeah, there's no hesitation there, right? Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that it's time for a modernization of that particular, part of our state law, right? Especially because it's not even I mean, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. So, I mean, we have that opportunity to, at the very least, come up to the federal standard. But yeah, to your point, I think it is something that needs to be done, with a degree of just economic care and certainty, right? So we need to, I think, be acclimating markets, be acclimating businesses into this. This is not something that's going to take place, necessarily overnight with the flip of a switch. Right. But we have an opportunity right now, especially because of the surplus in revenues that we've had as a state over this last year, but also the increased amount of federal surplus money, right, that's coming down now as a result of some of this pandemic aid that is filling our state's coffers. We are in a very strong financial position as a state, and I think as the state legislature and as a state legislator, if I have the honor, one of the things that we have to do is we have to view our role as kind of being emblematic of what are the state's priorities, right, when it comes to this budget, because that is one of, I would say, the most important part of being in the state legislature is, creating the budget and then sending it to the governor for approval. And I think that we have a real opportunity there to take a stand on the issues that we care about, not just, investing in our citizens and our neighbors in the state of Georgia for living and wages so that people can actually raise a family and thrive here, but to do that in a way that comes alongside our businesses. Here's their concern, certainly, isn't trying to make them bear the brunt of all of this. But again, we have a surplus as a state. We can, I am sure, with the smart people that we have working at the State House, working together, create a system in which maybe it's a gradual increase, maybe it's an increase over time, whatever that looks like, pegged to, inflation, annual cost of living increases, et cetera. But we can do something to make sure that our folks aren't having to work 4 jobs just to make ends meet at the end of the day, and still living kind of on a cycle of rent to rent, kind of paycheck.
Paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By any chance, do you know how much that surplus is?
You know what? Off the top of my head, I don't have that number for you, but I do know that we've got billions of dollars, right, in federal funding.
Yeah, that's billions
that
of
have come down,
dollars.
that are just sitting around, right? And that's not even talking about some of the stuff. Again, I know you don't want this to be an education-focused podcast, but the Georgia Lottery, right, is mandated to give out a certain percentage of the money that it takes in to fund things like Hope and to fund education expenses. And that is great. And they certainly do that. But I think that we could be, they have enough funds in there, over $700 million in surplus funds just sitting there for a rainy day, right? And I don't know, if I'm a lottery player, maybe my mind is, maybe I'm thinking, I'd be really, really excited to play the lottery for 800 million versus 700 million. Maybe that incremental $100 million is really going to get me out to buy a ticket. But I would say that, we could use some of that money to invest in an educational trust fund for our kids, right? Use it to do the purpose for which it was created, not just sitting there gathering dust for a rainy day. And so I think these are the kinds of solutions and the kinds of things that we can look at when we have, additional fresh perspectives down at the legislature, working together, trying to say, all right, we really do care about expanding educational access for our kids. We really do care about making sure that every family in Georgia has the opportunity to raise their kids and thrive in a safe and healthy environment. We want to make sure that folks have access to high quality and affordable healthcare options, and that doctors are getting reimbursed for the treatment that they're providing patients at the same time. We can do these things, and I bet you we can do it without, breaking the budget or without, making life unbearable for folks, like as some folks on the other side of the aisle sometimes say. There are creative ways to do this. We just got to put our heads together and get it done.
Yes.
There is we have a housing crisis. I know you know that. And
Absolutely.
in Gwinnett County, the price of houses is off the charts. Berkeley Lakes is pretty darn nice, so is Duluth and Norcross. But there's still a housing problem, and when it comes to affordability, what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you said it just now, right? It's up. You got me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, you said it. There's a huge crisis, and I do think that a large part of it is it's a supply-driven crisis, right? I mean, you look at Zillow, you can't find a house to buy on the market, like a single-family home, for less than $200,000 now, right? At least last time I checked. And if you did somehow manage to find that gem in Gwinnett County, you'd probably be gone in a couple of hours. And so I definitely do think that it's a problem that we need to put our heads together as a county and as a state to address. Now, I know that there are a lot of initiatives from the Gwinnett County government already, working with folks, like there's a, affordable housing bond issuance and things that I know have been under consideration in order to just inject even more supply into this market at present. But as we see these numbers, they're continuing to grow. We're expecting even more people to move, not just into Gwinnett, but into the metro Atlanta area more generally. We just don't have the supply that we need to have for this housing. And I think that it's gonna, we can't necessarily mandate that at the state level, right? There's so many local jurisdictions. There's a lot of zoning things that need to be addressed. And again, folks need to realize, I think, that apartment complexes or affordable housing places don't have to necessarily drive property values down. Right? They don't necessarily have to be, people like to always talk about the not in my backyard kind of folks, right? But I think that if we can have an honest conversation about why we need these things, what the benefit is going to be for our communities going forward, and how we can design them in a way that will continue to preserve, I think, the historic nature of a lot of our communities, but also do that in a way that allows more people to be a part of these communities, it'll be better. And so I know that there's a lot of positive movement going on right now as far as just how can we tweak the levers of the economy and how can we tweak investments to make sure that there's more supply. But yeah, we can't have folks just, with no option to buy a home in entire counties, right? We just can't have that, or where renting is the only option. And I think that requires not only government heads and policy folks to put their heads together, but also an understanding from the business community that that's not going to be in the long-term best interests of anybody.
Let me ask you this, and I don't know if you know this, but I just had a thought. So I'm in unincorporated Gwinnett County, and there was a subdivision that had not been developed since I moved to Gwinnett County almost 9 years ago. And recently they started to build, and I happened to go by and see it. Now it's been empty, not empty. It had about 3 houses. It's a small subdivision. And it had about 3 houses that has been there the entire time. They built one last year, which made it 4. I went by there about 2 weeks ago. They put up all these houses like instantly. The houses are $800,000. When it's time for developers to come in, so remember, empty now 800,000, and it says low 800s. When it's time for developers to come in and to develop these subdivisions or land or whatever, are there policies in place that can say to them, you can't build a house for this amount of money?
Mm. I know that there has been discussion around, definitely restricting or at least providing additional guidance, shall we say, to developers around, the preferred uses for land and for homes that are being built. And at least to me personally, I think that really should come from a local level, right? I mean, I think if localities, if city councils, if mayors, and if folks, even in like places like unincorporated Gwinnett, county governments say this is what we want these particular parcels of land to be, I think that that's entirely within their rights as jurisdictions to be able to have those discussions with developers. I don't know necessarily that a one-size-fits-all policy coming down from the state level would be the best way to address that, because again, I think your affordable housing needs are probably a lot different in a place like Washington, Wilkes County, or somewhere more removed from the Metro Atlanta area than what we're seeing in Gwinnett. But I definitely think that there is a lot of merit to that argument, right? Where if we're pricing out the people who have called this place home for decades, it's just not right. It's just not good for, I think, us, for the economy, for our citizens, and it doesn't send the right message to the folks here in the state of Georgia that when the chips are down and when you're feeling like you need a little bit more support, that somebody's going to be there for you.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for our leaders to say, well, you know what, we can't allow this to happen when we have people who actually can buy those houses. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for that part, because I think about I've lived in Gwinnett now almost 9 years, and I remember when they got ready to do the lawn downtown Lawrenceville, the houses were $200,000, the exact same houses, and a year and a half later they were $400,000, and I was like, well, what happened between except for the years changed and maybe the population changed, so it went up. So I think homelessness is a problem everywhere, and affordable housing is something we definitely need to tackle in Gwinnett County. And I know the mayor of Norcross was looking at some, Craig Newton. He was looking at some affordable housing, some alternative housing. I've heard he's talked about tiny houses. When it comes to things like tiny houses and container homes, are there regulations or is there something at the state level that can be done to help us bring this type of houses into the community that will be affordable and easy to assemble? I've even heard, I even looked into this myself, 3D printing homes. And I've seen some printed and they were gorgeous. And so what's your thoughts on that type of alternative living?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have a conversation with Mayor Newton on kind of the tiny houses, the container homes. I'm not personally as familiar with that yet, but I know that from Norcross, the city of Norcross and also the community organizations in Norcross, they've been doing a lot of great work to kind of figure out, one, how can we increase the supply to what you're talking about? What are some of these innovative methods that we can use maybe that will, of course, still comply with standards and, code and things like that. We don't want to be building bad houses just for the sake of driving the pricing down. But that will actually provide families an opportunity to maintain that sense of stability. One of the things that I've talked to with folks, not just in Norcross, but across, our Metro Atlanta area, and that we're involved in right now with my church in particular, is trying to figure out a way, is there a way that we can help families go from rental situations into actually having an equity stake in the homes that they're living in currently, right? And I think the more that we can draw attention to, if there are federal funds available, if there are state funds available, if we want to create a fund for that to encourage increased first-time home ownership among these, sorts of folks living in these kinds of situations, then I think that could be a really exciting next step forward for making sure that families do have that opportunity, that they're not feeling like they're subject to the whims of a landlord who maybe is going to, bump their rent up 25-30% or something year over year. But hey, we can help you get, these down payment options together. We've done this in Norcross where we've had families, who were in rental kind of situations. We've assisted them in making sure that they were able to get a down payment and convert that rent into actually paying off a mortgage, right? And then they've got equity. Then they've got, opportunities to start building up wealth in these places that they've called home. And I think that's it's a targeted solution maybe, and maybe one that is right now on a smaller scale. But if we can figure out a way to get that more widely available to folks across Gwinnett County, particularly in places like you're talking about, where you've seen home prices skyrocket 200% in a year, then I think that we're going to be on the path to success. So again, it's not a one silver bullet kind of answer, I don't think. I think we have to do more investing in the housing supply and doing what the county government is doing right now and making sure that we have more of these places being built and developed. But even for the existing places, I think that we as a state can really figure out a way to come alongside folks and in the nonprofit and community sectors to figure out a way to help them get additional ownership interests in these places that they already have, kind of available to them.
I love that. I love that idea, but I'm gonna kind of play devil's advocate here
I love it.
because there are hedge funds out there who have bought up a lot of the inventory, and I can think of 3 off the top of my head, and they're just not interested in doing anything except for collecting rents. So I don't know, how do you manage to? I don't know, what do you do with those? Because if there's somebody living in a house paying $2,200 for rent, and the hedge funds company is saying, yeah, we don't want to be a part of that. I don't know what you do with that, but I love the program. I would love to know more about that program.
Absolutely.
So I can share that with my listeners and on the Good Morning Gwinnett show. So if you could shoot me an email later and tell me what that is, I would love to talk about that more.
Amen. And absolutely would love to do that. And just really quickly on your point, I totally hear what you're saying, right? And I think that, again, that just has to be a conversation with folks who have been in these situations, who understand it. Like I'm familiar with that model as well, right? And again, I can understand it from their perspective. It's just throwing off cash flow for them, right? I mean, that's got to be super nice to have just kind of in your back pocket. But these are people's lives that are being affected. So to a certain extent, yeah, maybe if there's only a certain portion of that, subdivision or whatever that is rent only, maybe that's the answer. But then you have to have some sort of, understanding with the local government or, with the regulatory authorities that there needs to continue to be options for folks who live in these communities to stay living in these communities, to be a part of these communities in the long term. So, what does that look like right now? Sitting here, can't exactly tell you, but we will be having those conversations because that is something that needs to be addressed.
That's a biggie. That's a biggie, JT. So
before we, as we get coming to the wrap up, I want to make sure we touch another one of your parties, which was extending healthcare in the state of Georgia. As we all know, there is so much money on a federal level for healthcare that's just sitting there, and Georgia is too stubborn to accept it because it's coming from a Democrat. So my question is, how do you foresee yourself working with the rest of the House Democrats and trying to get the state to expand Medicaid?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think the easy thing, right, is let's just win all these races, right? Let's win all these races, and then we can get this thing passed. But of course, as all of us on this call are, we're looking at the maps, and we realize that we're, in order for things to get done in the General Assembly, it's going to require folks from our caucus, I think, working and trying to find common ground with the other side, just because of the way that the numbers are looking for these next couple of cycles. And again, I don't want to make promises that we can't deliver on, right? I know that's a thing that people say about politicians all the time, but in order for us to actually have constructive conversations and progress, we have to be level-headed, and we have to be realistic about what we can actually do in the short to medium term, and make sure that we're talking to our neighbors and our constituents about that and setting expectations. So for me, look, I wear a healthcare hat for some of my day job, right? So I help expand treatment options for folks, non-opiate treatment options, I should say, for folks in chronic pain or for folks who are, suffering from opiate and substance use disorder. And so that is one thing I think that we can all get behind, Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever, is that the opiate crisis in this country is a huge, huge problem. And so this is where I always start when we're talking about healthcare expansion issues, because I don't care who you are, you probably know somebody who has been affected by this crisis in one way or the other, and it's not in a good way. Right. But right now we have the technology, as they say, right? We have the medicines that are available to treat these things, gold standard medications like Suboxone or like buprenorphine, which can be delivered in a Listerine strip. Essentially, you put it in your mouth and then you're good. It blocks your opiate receptors, stops you from going into withdrawal, and it helps you, at least start to transition back into, your prior kind of regular life. The issue is that, of course, if folks are addicted to opiates or going through these kinds of challenges, sometimes their only insurance option is Medicaid. And in the state of Georgia, providers aren't being reimbursed appropriately for seeing these kinds of patients and writing these kinds of prescriptions. So you've got prescribers who, in addition to some of this bureaucratic red tape that's going on, that actually only allows them to see 200 people who are addicted to opiates and need this medication a year. They then don't get paid enough when they see these people to actually be able to even break even on the visit. So they're losing money every single time that they see one of these patients, which is why in the city of Norcross, you can go on the SAMHSA, which is the federal government website, and search City of Norcross buprenorphine providers. There's 6 of them, and each of them can only see 200 people each. So to me, that asks the question as a policymaker, do you really think there's only 1,200 opiate sufferers in the entire city of Norcross that need assistance like this? And the answer, of course, is no. And so this is what I like to think of as low-hanging fruit, right? Maybe our colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to fully expand Medicaid. Okay, we can argue the merits of that all day long. I think it makes sense to expand Medicaid because you're saving money actually for helping more people, and you're getting 600,000 people in Georgia who don't have access to high quality and affordable health insurance, the care that they need. But fine, if that's the hill that you guys really don't want to cross, okay. But at the very least, can we agree that opiate sufferers who really do need assistance, who are dying in this country every single day, should at least have access to the life-saving care that our government already calls the gold standard at a reasonable rate and at an accessible rate for them so that they can continue to get on with their lives. So to your question, how can we attack the healthcare problem? I think we do it in bits and pieces, right? Of course, we're going to continue to strive towards expanding Medicaid more fully. But when there are things like this where we can find common ground and say, look, yes, let's get our providers reimbursed and get our patients the treatment that they need, all the better. So those are kinds of the areas that I would want to start talking about and focusing on, not only because, you kind of legislate from experience, right? But also because I do think that this is, to your point, Audrey, something that really can help a heck of a lot of people really, really quickly. And we have the opportunity to do it. We just need to put our heads together and get it done.
Wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're at the top of the hour, and we want you to tell people how they can reach out to you and support your campaign and all of the great work that you have done so far and plan on continuing to do.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate y'all having me on. You can contact me at JTWU, that's JTWU for Georgia, FORGEORGIA. So JT@JTWooforgeorgia.com is my personal email on the campaign side. You can also head to our website, JTWooforgeorgia.com. All the links are there. Obviously, we'd be honored to earn your support, whether that's through your time, your treasure, or really just reaching out to chat. There's a schedule a meeting link right on the homepage there, and it links directly to my personal calendar. I would love to have a conversation with y'all, hear what's going on in y'all's lives, hear how we can be thinking about things to continue coming alongside you to make our community even stronger. Early voting starts May 2nd. The primary day is May 24th, and we would be honored to earn your support. So we're going to be out there talking to our community, talking to our neighbors about things that we can do to innovate, not only, but also to defend the American dream for the next generation. So really appreciate you guys having me on and really thankful for the time.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today. As always, we appreciate all of our guests who come on to share their plans for our future here in the state of Georgia and Gwinnett County. So thank you for taking that time out. Listen, got a lot of good stuff sound like going on there, and we wish you the very best in your campaign and your run. And if you want to come back and do a follow-up once you win, come on back. Now listen, don't ghost us when you win, because we get ghosted when folks win. Okay,
never that.
I've interviewed people and they won. I can't even get them on the phone. I can't even get an email or a text. I got their personal number, so I'm just gonna tell you, don't ghost me now when you win. I'm like, hey, come on back.
Yeah. No, y'all keep us honest, and absolutely, it's been a pleasure, and looking forward to coming back soon. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks so much. So listen, guys, that's all we got for today. We'll be back again at next Sunday, same bat place, same bat time. Derek and myself will be here. Be sure to tune in for another episode of Popcorn and Politics. Y'all have a wonderful Sunday. If y'all in the state of Georgia, it is beautiful. If not, we're sorry. Until next time, my friends, until next time, make it a great day. Bye, y'all.
You've been listening to Popcorn in Politics. What's the real deal? Hosted by Audrey Bell Kearney and Derek J. Wilson. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your family and friends. To support the show, visit us on the web at www.popcorninpolitics.com. Connect with us on Facebook at Progressive Popcorn and on Instagram at Popcorn Politics Podcast.